Hello everyone, it's One Who Catches Lightning and Keeper of the Thunderstone here with your Mayan calendar update. We're going to go over the Trecena that we're already in. I have a tendency of, doing these the third day in, number 3. So this Trecena is the Trecena of rainstorm. Now, one of the important things to start to connect, right, is that whenever you are in a cosmology, an indigenous cosmology, things are not separate, right? I've been sitting with this, and it's been really interesting as I look at the differences between Western astrology and indigenous cosmology. There is separation, right? In Western astrology, you have a sign that then interacts with other signs, and then there's good or bad things that happen. So Western astrology teaches that, again, Saturn and Saturn, it has its tendencies, and then when it interacts in certain cycles or with another planet that it doesn't like or it does like, it's good or bad for you. And so it really continues this story of individualism, and that the only way of connection is through conflict or no conflict, right? And so it teaches that, it's either good or bad to be connected, right? You might like the results, you might not like the results. Indigenous cosmology, everything is connected. So even when we talk about today is the day 1 or the day 2 or the day 3, there's always another Nahual. There's a Nahual, a day sign and a Nahual, right? A 1 to 13, and then an animal, a form, an element. Now, when we are speaking of that element for today, Imosh, right? Imish, the crocodile. We're not just speaking about a crocodile as an individual, right? We're not going to Google and waste water, on ChatGPT and what is the sign of a crocodile. Our ancestors learned through observation. So whenever we're saying crocodile, we're not talking about an individual crocodile, right? Without its environment. Everything is environment because everything is tied to nature. So when I say crocodile, when I say jaguar, when I say caracol, right? When I say bat, right? And in my classes, we're not just speaking of that individual animal, again, element in and of itself. And the only way that it relates is to create conflict or non-conflict. It's always connected. And so when we're coming into cosmology, right, and we're sitting with 13 days, and this is what I love about this Trecena, it's rainstorm. Now, rain affects everyone, or lack of. You're always in relation, no matter where you are in the world, no matter what you are, it will affect you in one way or another. Here we go, interaction. And so we have a beautiful opportunity, right, to sit with the rainstorms, the many ways rain falls. Now, rain is not a singular element, right? It's not a singular thing. Rain talks about how the interaction of wind and water, 2 elements, right? It talks about heat, right? To create a storm, there must be pressure up and down that creates that tension to let go. Interesting, right? So we're never speaking of one thing. It's always in relation. And rain provides us the opportunity to sit with wind. Wind is the one that goes into the oceans, into the lakes, lifts up, right? Lifts up that water into the sky, brings it to us. And there's a whole cycle, right? This whole cycle that happens. So rainstorms speaking to us about cycles. And we have 13 days to examine the cycles of our life. My love, don't do that. Today we're sitting with crocodile. Crocodile, again, in relation to its environment, also in relation to its history. An ancient animal. An animal that can go underground in the water, right? Can see in murky waters, can rise up, right? Can kind of walk on land, right? Can move. And so all of the alligator, right, crocodile characteristics are how it relates, right? How it lives in an environment, right? So that's why when we're working with crocodile, we're working with really primordial energies, right? Or that's why so many creation stories talk about the ik, the ook, the ooze, right? We all started in the ooze, the mud, right? And crocodile knows mud. So today on a day 3, which can be upsetting for some, it's that day to step forward into our rediscovery that we are never separate. We are always connected. And that's what my Eek 3 Breath illustrated book tells you. Here's one of the panels beautifully drawn by an illustrator here on Big Island, Indigenous, written by myself and my ancestors who told it to me in a dream, Indigenous. So this is an Indigenous way of telling story. And that's why it's so visual, because Indigenous people knew that people spoke many languages and that we needed to find ways to interact, right? To trade, to communicate, right? Not to indoctrinate. And so visual language was very important, and it continues because visual language is based on observation. I see a sky, it looks this color to me, therefore I paint it this way. I see the rainbow, it looks this color to me, I paint it this way. And not everything looks the same to everyone, which is a beautiful thing. That's a whole nother story. But this book talks about how in this story we're always in relation, and it talks about what happened to humans as they separated, as they forgot that they were all the universe, land, maunas, ocean, waters, airs, and that story of separation from where we were just one breath all together. All we had to do, right, is take one breath and we were connected to everything because we were created with that breath. But humans forgot, because that's the MO, right? If you needed to, if you need to Google what is a human MO, just like a spirit totem, it would say forgetful, malleable, right? Stubborn, right? A lot of things, right? And so it's important as we continue forward to start drawing more connection and start to look at the world as a cosmology and not an astrology. And the way to do that is to shift from telling story to tending story, right? So here is another panel in this book that we're on our Kickstarter. Again, talking about, right, here's a human who is a being in relationship to the bear people and the jaguar, right? And here's the gift, and I'm not going to spoil the whole story. The gift that they are working and walking with together. Here, never is there separation. And it might seem where I'm going to find a jaguar and a bear, which are both endangered and right now being hunted. Let's not go into that because they'll start crying. But here's an opportunity to reimagine how our ancestors taught through visual stories. Of course, the real book will have words, right? How our ancestors always, when speaking of themselves, were speaking about the all. And how we have had to go from one breath to now the 3 breaths to find connection. So there's history, there's story in there. I hope that you find it in your heart today in any way that wherever you are, I know there's a lot happening in the world to help us with this Kickstarter. We're about 50% there. We have, I think, 8 or 7 days left. We would love your help, even if it's $1. Our money is going to publish this book as well as a moon and cacao journal that goes through the Hawaiian moon phases, and also an ebook. So there's an opportunity to just donate $1. You can buy the illustrated book. You can also get a whole package that has those 3s, whatever. There's also other things there to support yourself, to fill your cup, cacao tea from Cuatro Manos, and also to help fill up others. Help us tell this story. Stories don't belong to individuals, they belong to a village. I hope that you, as my village, will help us get this out. Again, our end date to get our goal is around August 3-4. I think it's like 4 a.m. So it's about, let's try to get it done by August 3rd. There's the number 3 again. Hoping that this Trecena brings a rainfall of opportunities to this Kickstarter as well as to you. May you be resourced, and may you remember that you are part of the all. So your story is a much larger story. Right, little ones? Shide.